For more than 2,000 years, one mystery has refused to fade. Empires have risen, kingdoms have fallen, and entire civilizations have vanished beneath the weight of history. Yet one question still refuses to be answered. How could an entire Roman legion simply disappear? Not a patrol, not a handful of soldiers, but thousands of disciplined warriors carrying the banners of the greatest empire on earth. They marched beyond Rome's eastern frontier with confidence, experience, and the strength of an empire behind them. They were expected to return with victory. They never did. No battlefield was ever confirmed. No final message reached Rome. Only silence remained, and a mystery that has haunted history ever since.
The Roman Empire did not become the greatest power in the ancient world by chance. Every soldier was trained to move as one, fight as one, and, if necessary, die as one. A Roman legion was more than an army. It was a machine built with extraordinary discipline, where every command echoed through thousands of men with almost perfect precision. To lose a battle was rare. To lose an entire legion without explanation seemed almost impossible. Yet somewhere beyond the eastern frontier, that impossible story was about to begin.
Every legion contained nearly 5,000 professional soldiers, supported by engineers, medics, craftsmen, scouts, and supply units. They built roads as they marched, constructed fortified camps before sunset, and could transform an empty field into a secure military base within hours. Their organization amazed both allies and enemies. Even distant kingdoms believed Rome's legions could overcome almost anything. Few could imagine that one day even this unstoppable force would face something history could barely explain.
Beyond Rome's eastern borders stretched a world unlike anything most Roman soldiers had ever known. Endless deserts shimmered beneath a burning sun. Jagged mountain ranges blocked ancient trade routes. Vast grasslands disappeared beyond the horizon, where powerful horsemen moved like the wind. It was a land filled with unfamiliar languages, unknown kingdoms, and dangers that no Roman map could fully capture. Somewhere in this enormous frontier, the trail of one legion would slowly vanish.
Every legion contained nearly 5,000 professional soldiers, supported by engineers, medics, craftsmen, scouts, and supply units. They built roads as they marched, constructed fortified camps before sunset, and could transform an empty field into a secure military base within hours. Their organization amazed both allies and enemies. Even distant kingdoms believed Rome's legions could overcome almost anything. Few could imagine that one day even this unstoppable force would face something history could barely explain. Long before the first sword was drawn, strange rumors had already reached Roman commanders. Traders returning along the Silk Road spoke of fierce nomadic armies, mysterious eastern kingdoms, and battles unlike those fought in Europe. Some stories sounded impossible, others sounded terrifying. Most officers dismissed them as exaggerated tales told around campfires, but history has a habit of hiding the truth inside stories that seem too unbelievable to accept. For Roman soldiers, the frontier was more than a border. It was the dividing line between the known world and everything that remained a mystery. Beyond those distant mountains lived peoples Rome barely understood. Some traded peacefully with the empire. Others fought with incredible speed, striking without warning before disappearing into the endless wilderness. Every step farther from Rome meant fewer roads, fewer allies, and far fewer chances of returning home alive. Life inside a Roman legion was built upon routine. Before sunrise came inspection, then training, then marching for miles beneath the weight of heavy armor, shields, weapons, and supplies. Discipline never relaxed, whether the army stood inside Italy or thousands of miles from the capital. Veterans often believed that Roman discipline alone could defeat any enemy. It was a confidence earned through generations of victories. But confidence can sometimes become the first step toward disaster. Ancient historians often described Rome as an empire that carefully recorded everything. Victories were celebrated, defeats were investigated. Governors reported to emperors, generals wrote detailed accounts of their campaigns. Because of this, historians find one particular silence deeply unsettling. Somewhere in the surviving records, the trail simply ends. A legion that should have continued to appear in military reports suddenly disappears, leaving behind questions that no Roman writer could fully answer.
For centuries, scholars have searched for clues hidden inside forgotten manuscripts, damaged inscriptions, and scattered archaeological discoveries. Every new fragment seems to reveal a small piece of the puzzle, yet none provide the complete picture. Instead, each discovery creates another mystery, another possibility, and another reason to wonder whether the truth lies far beyond the borders where Rome believed its power could reach.
One ancient account speaks of a disastrous campaign that unfolded far from the heart of the empire. Roman forces had marched deep into unfamiliar territory, believing that discipline and experience would overcome every obstacle ahead. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by landscapes they did not understand, facing enemies who refused to fight by Roman rules. Every mile forward stretched their supply lines thinner, while every mile back became harder to reclaim.
Unlike the armies of Europe, many Eastern warriors relied on speed instead of heavy armor. Mounted archers could strike from incredible distances before disappearing across open plains long before Roman infantry could respond. They avoided direct confrontation, choosing patience over glory. Day after day, they exhausted their enemies without ever risking a decisive battle. It was a style of warfare that challenged everything Rome believed about victory.
The deeper the Romans advanced, the stranger their world became. Familiar roads vanished, reliable maps ended. Local guides often disappeared during the night, leaving exhausted soldiers to navigate endless deserts and rocky valleys alone. Water became precious, supplies dwindled. Even experienced veterans began to realize that courage alone could not defeat hunger, distance, and an enemy who controlled every path ahead. Then, the records begin to fracture. Some ancient writers hint at a devastating defeat. Others mention captured soldiers whose fate remained uncertain. A few offer only brief references before moving on to entirely different events, as though the disappearance of thousands of Roman troops was never fully understood, even by those living closest to the tragedy. And within those scattered fragments lies the mystery that historians continue to debate to this very day. Among these scattered accounts, one event appears again and again: the catastrophic Battle of Carrhae in 53 BC. It was here that the Roman general Marcus Licinius Crassus led one of the largest armies ever assembled by the Republic into the deserts of Mesopotamia. Confident after years of military success, he believed another glorious victory awaited him. Instead, he marched directly toward one of Rome's greatest disasters. The mystery becomes even more intriguing because there is no single ancient source that tells the complete story. Instead, historians must gather scattered pieces written by different authors across different centuries. One account mentions prisoners, another describes a crushing defeat, a third remains strangely silent. Like fragments of a shattered mirror, each source reflects only a small part of what may have happened, leaving modern researchers to assemble a picture that is still incomplete. Crassus was not an ordinary commander. He was one of the wealthiest men in Roman history and a member of the powerful First Triumvirate alongside Julius Caesar and Pompey. His ambition was enormous. Military glory, he believed, would secure his place among Rome's greatest leaders forever. But history often remembers ambition not for its victories, but for the terrible price it demands when confidence becomes arrogance. As the Roman columns pushed deeper into the desert, something felt wrong. The enemy refused to meet them in the traditional way. There were no fortified cities to capture, no disciplined infantry waiting across an open battlefield. Only endless sand, distant dust clouds, and mounted warriors who seemed to appear and disappear with the wind. Without realizing it, the Romans were walking into a battlefield designed entirely for someone else's advantage. When the battle finally began, the Romans quickly realized they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Waves of mounted archers rode in wide circles around the Roman formations, releasing endless clouds of arrows before disappearing beyond the reach of Roman weapons. Every attempt to force a close fight failed. The enemy refused to stand still, turning the open desert itself into their greatest weapon. The legionaries responded exactly as they had been trained. Shields locked together, ranks remained unbroken. Officers shouted familiar commands above the chaos. But discipline alone could not stop arrows that seemed to fall from every direction. Hours passed beneath the relentless assault. The desert echoed with the sound of iron striking shields, wounded horses collapsing into the sand, and exhausted soldiers realizing they were fighting an enemy they could barely touch. As the sun climbed higher, the situation became desperate. The Romans expected their attackers to run out of arrows, yet fresh supplies continued to arrive on camel caravans waiting safely behind the battlefield. Every time the Parthian horsemen returned, another storm of arrows swept across the Roman lines. Hope slowly disappeared. What had begun as a confident invasion was becoming one of the greatest military disasters Rome had ever suffered. By the time darkness approached, thousands of Roman soldiers lay dead across the desert. General Crassus himself would never return to Rome. But even after the battle ended, another mystery had only just begun. Ancient writers claimed that thousands of surviving Roman prisoners were captured instead of killed. Their fate would become one of history's most fascinating unanswered questions, leading researchers toward a theory so extraordinary that it continues to spark debate more than 2,000 years later. The Parthians understood the value of skilled prisoners. Roman legionaries were disciplined, experienced, and trained to build forts, defend cities, and fight in organized formations. Rather than wasting such valuable men, they reportedly settled many of them along the empire's remote eastern frontier, where their military experience could strengthen vulnerable border regions against future invasions from even more distant enemies. Ancient sources suggest that nearly 10,000 Roman prisoners survived the Battle of Carrhae. Instead of being executed, they were marched east, farther away from Rome than most of them could ever have imagined. Month after month, they crossed deserts, rivers, and mountain passes under heavy guard until the familiar world they knew disappeared completely. For these soldiers, the empire was no longer a destination. It had become nothing more than a distant memory.
And then, history grows strangely quiet once again. Roman records never describe a large rescue mission. No surviving commander returned to tell their story. Families back in Italy waited for news that never arrived. To Rome, these soldiers had simply vanished beyond the horizon. Their names slowly disappeared from official records, while generations passed without knowing whether they had died in captivity or continued living under a completely different sky.
Centuries later, this silence would inspire one of the most remarkable historical theories ever proposed.
What if those missing Roman prisoners did not disappear forever? What if they continued marching east until they reached a civilization that had never encountered Rome before? A civilization whose own ancient records might still preserve the final chapter of their extraordinary journey. The first clue emerged not from Rome, but from ancient China. In the 20th century, historians began examining Chinese records, describing an unusual battle fought far beyond the western frontier of the Han Empire. Among the many warriors facing Chinese forces, one particular group fought in a way unlike any army the Chinese had encountered before. Their battlefield formation immediately captured the attention of modern researchers. Chinese chroniclers described these mysterious soldiers as fighting in a formation resembling overlapping fish scales. They advanced together, shields connected so tightly that they appeared almost impossible to break apart. To many historians, the description sounded surprisingly familiar. The famous Roman testudo, or tortoise formation, relied on locked shields to protect soldiers from arrows while advancing as a single moving wall. Could this remarkable similarity be more than a coincidence? One name soon entered the debate: Liqian, a remote village in northwestern China. For decades, stories circulated claiming that some residents possessed unusual physical features, including lighter eyes, sharper facial structures, and characteristics that local tradition linked to distant Western ancestors. These observations alone proved nothing, yet they inspired researchers to ask an extraordinary question. Could descendants of lost Roman soldiers still be living thousands of miles from the city they once served? The theory spread rapidly through books, documentaries, and newspapers around the world. Some embraced it as one of history's greatest discoveries. Others dismissed it as an attractive legend built upon fragile evidence. But whether true or false, the possibility that Roman legionaries may have marched farther east than anyone had imagined transformed an old military mystery into an international search for answers that continues even today. Attention soon turned toward archaeology. If Roman soldiers had truly settled in this region, traces of their presence might still survive beneath the soil. Excavations searched for Roman weapons, military equipment, coins, pottery, inscriptions, or the unmistakable remains of Roman fortifications. Every new discovery raised fresh hopes, yet none provided the decisive proof historians had been searching for. The silence beneath the ground proved almost as mysterious as the silence within the ancient texts. As more researchers investigated the Liqian theory, the excitement was matched by growing skepticism. Archaeologists pointed out that unusual physical features alone could never prove Roman ancestry. Human populations had moved across Eurasia for thousands of years, and trade routes connected distant cultures long before the rise of modern nations. A remarkable appearance might inspire curiosity, but history demands stronger evidence than appearances alone. Modern genetic research added another chapter to the investigation. Scientists analyzed DNA from local populations, hoping to uncover clear genetic links to ancient Mediterranean peoples. The results, however, were far more complicated than many expected. While some individuals showed ancestry connected to Western Eurasia, none of the studies could conclusively identify them as direct descendants of Roman legionaries. The evidence remained intriguing, but far from definitive. Instead of solving the mystery, every scientific investigation seemed to reveal another layer of uncertainty. The Roman theory could not be fully proven, yet neither could it be completely dismissed. Historians found themselves standing between possibility and evidence, forced to admit that one of history's most captivating stories might forever remain balanced between documented fact and enduring legend. Perhaps the greatest challenge facing historians is separating possibility from probability. A theory may sound convincing,
but history demands evidence that can withstand careful examination. The image of Roman soldiers settling on the edge of ancient China is undeniably fascinating, yet fascination alone cannot replace proof. Every responsible historian must ask the same question: what can actually be supported by surviving records, and what has grown larger through centuries of imagination? Even the ancient writers disagreed with one another. Some accounts were written decades after the events they described. Others relied on second-hand reports passed from one generation to the next. Documents were copied by hand, translated into different languages, and sometimes damaged or lost entirely. By the time modern scholars began comparing these texts, many details had already become blurred by the passage of 2,000 years. This uncertainty is precisely what keeps the mystery alive. If every document had survived, there would be no debate. If every battlefield had been carefully excavated, there would be no unanswered questions. Instead, historians are left with fragments, broken inscriptions, incomplete chronicles, and scattered archaeological discoveries that resemble pieces of a puzzle with no surviving picture to guide their placement. Yet history has surprised us before. Entire cities once believed to be mythical have later been uncovered beneath layers of earth. Long-forgotten shipwrecks have emerged from the ocean after centuries of silence. Ancient scrolls hidden inside caves have transformed our understanding of civilizations we thought we already knew. Because of discoveries like these, many researchers believe the final chapter of Rome's missing legion may still be waiting beneath the sand, hidden in an unexplored ruin, or preserved inside a forgotten manuscript that no one has yet recognized. Imagine standing beneath a sky where no one speaks your language. The commands that once echoed across Roman camps are replaced by unfamiliar voices. The banners you once saluted have vanished beyond the horizon. The roads that always led back to Rome no longer exist. For many prisoners, hope of returning home may have slowly faded, replaced by the simple determination to survive another season in an unfamiliar land. While scholars continued searching for answers in ancient texts and archaeological sites, another question slowly emerged. If the missing legion truly survived, how would their lives have changed after captivity? These were not ordinary travelers choosing a new home. They were professional soldiers, taken far beyond the borders of the empire they had sworn to serve. Every familiar custom, every spoken word, and every memory of Rome would have become increasingly distant with each passing year. History offers many examples of captured soldiers eventually becoming part of the societies that once held them prisoner. Some married into local communities. Others trained foreign armies, shared military knowledge, or raised children who knew nothing of the homeland their fathers had lost. If even a portion of the Roman prisoners followed this path, their identity would not have disappeared overnight. It would have changed gradually, one generation at a time, until Rome became little more than a story told by aging grandfathers beside distant campfires. This possibility reminds us that history is not always written by dramatic endings. Sometimes the greatest mysteries are not about how people died, but about how they continued living after the world believed they had vanished forever. And perhaps that is why the story of Rome's missing legion continues to fascinate us, because somewhere beyond the surviving records, thousands of untold human lives may still be hidden between the lines of history. If there is one lesson hidden within this mystery, it is that history is often far more fragile than we imagine. We like to believe that great empires preserved every important event, that every victory was recorded and every tragedy carefully documented. Yet the disappearance of an entire Roman force reminds us that even the most powerful civilization in the ancient world could lose pieces of its own story. Time erases records just as surely as wind erases footprints across an open desert. Roman soldiers were trained to believe that they served something eternal. The empire stretched from Britain to the Middle East, connecting distant lands with roads, laws, and disciplined armies. Few could have imagined that one day Rome itself would become history, its cities transformed into ruins, its legions remembered only through scattered stones and fading manuscripts. The missing legion became just one mystery among countless others left behind by a civilization that once believed itself invincible. Today, archaeologists continue to uncover forgotten forts buried beneath farmland, abandoned settlements hidden beneath forests, and ancient battlefields preserved beneath layers of earth. Every excavation reminds us that history is never truly finished. Beneath the next field, beneath the next desert, or beneath the foundations of an ancient city, discoveries still wait patiently for the right moment to emerge into the light. And perhaps that is why the story refuses to disappear. It is no longer only about a missing legion. It has become a symbol of everything history has not yet revealed. Every unanswered question invites another generation to continue searching, hoping that somewhere among broken stones and forgotten records, the silence surrounding Rome's lost soldiers will finally begin to speak. Technology has transformed the search in remarkable ways. Satellites now scan deserts once considered impossible to explore. Ground-penetrating radar reveals structures hidden beneath layers of earth without disturbing a single stone. Artificial intelligence compares damaged texts that human eyes struggled to connect for centuries. Historians today possess tools that Roman scholars could never have imagined. But even these powerful methods have yet to uncover the final fate of the missing soldiers. Across museums, libraries, and archaeological sites around the world, the mystery of the vanished legion continues to inspire new research. Ancient coins are carefully cleaned beneath microscopes. Broken inscriptions are translated letter by letter. Fragments of forgotten manuscripts are compared with records written thousands of miles apart. Each discovery has the potential to change the story, yet every answer seems to reveal another question waiting just beyond it. Perhaps the greatest obstacle is not the lack of evidence, but the enormous passage of time. More than 2,000 years have passed since those soldiers disappeared from Rome's records. Cities have risen and fallen, rivers have changed their course, entire landscapes have been reshaped by nature and human civilization. Whatever traces those men left behind may now rest beneath modern towns, forgotten ruins, or places that have never been excavated at all. And so, the search continues, not because historians expect an easy answer, but because history has repeatedly rewarded patience. Again and again, discoveries once considered impossible have emerged from beneath sand, sea, and stone. Somewhere, hidden beyond the pages that survived, another forgotten clue may still exist. Until that moment arrives, the Roman legion that marched into silence will remain one of the ancient world's most enduring and captivating mysteries. History is filled with mysteries that may never be completely solved, yet few are as captivating as the disappearance of Rome's lost legion. Unlike legends born from myth alone, this story rests upon real battles, real soldiers, and real historical records that simply stop before the final chapter is written. Somewhere beyond the eastern frontier, thousands of men stepped beyond the edge of the known world, leaving behind questions that have survived far longer than the empire they once served. For the families waiting in Rome, there was no final farewell, no victorious parade returned through the city gates,
No messenger carried news explaining what had become of fathers, brothers, or sons. As years became decades, hope slowly gave way to silence. Children grew into old age, never knowing whether their loved ones had fallen in battle, lived in captivity, or built entirely new lives beneath distant skies they had never imagined existed before.
Perhaps the greatest mystery is not where they disappeared, but how easily even extraordinary lives can be erased from history. Thousands of disciplined soldiers marching beneath one of the most powerful empires ever created slowly vanished until only scattered fragments remained. Their names faded, their footsteps disappeared. Their story survived only because later generations refused to stop asking questions that history itself seemed unwilling to answer. And maybe that is why we continue searching today. Every generation inherits the mysteries left behind by those who came before. Some are eventually solved. Others remain suspended between evidence and imagination, reminding us that history is never complete. Somewhere beneath forgotten ruins or hidden within an overlooked manuscript, the final clue may still exist, waiting patiently for the day when the silence of Rome's lost legion is finally broken. Even if the complete truth is never discovered, the mystery has already achieved something remarkable. It has outlived emperors, kingdoms, and even the empire that created it. The Roman legion that disappeared beyond the eastern frontier has become more than a military puzzle. It has become a reminder that history is not a finished book. New discoveries continue to rewrite what we once believed to be certain, and every generation inherits the responsibility of asking questions that previous generations could not answer. Imagine standing beside those soldiers on the morning they began their final march. The sun rises over the distant horizon. Armor glitters beneath the first light of day. Standards wave above thousands of disciplined men who believe they are simply beginning another campaign. None of them know they are about to enter one of history's greatest mysteries. None of them realize that 2,000 years later, people across the world will still be searching for the path they never returned from. Perhaps somewhere beneath the sands of Central Asia, beneath the foundations of an ancient fortress, or hidden inside a forgotten archive, the final evidence still survives. A broken inscription, a military helmet, a forgotten letter. A single discovery could transform centuries of speculation into documented history. Until that day arrives, historians will continue following every clue, questioning every theory, and exploring every possibility, with the hope that silence itself may one day reveal its secrets. And maybe that is the greatest lesson of all. History is not only about the stories we already know, it is equally about the stories that remain unfinished. The missing Roman legion reminds us that beyond every map, beyond every surviving manuscript, and beyond every accepted theory, there are still mysteries waiting patiently to be uncovered. Somewhere beyond the edge of certainty, history continues, and so does our search for the truth. Long after the Roman Empire faded into history, its roads crumbled, its fortresses collapsed, and its once mighty legions became legends. Yet among all the unanswered questions left behind by the ancient world, the disappearance of a single legion continues to capture the imagination unlike almost any other. Not because we know exactly what happened, but because we do not. Every unanswered mystery invites us to look closer, to question accepted beliefs, and to remember that history still holds countless secrets beneath its surface. For archaeologists, the search is far from over.
Every excavation begins with hope. A single coin buried beneath centuries of soil, a weathered inscription carved into forgotten stone, or the remains of an abandoned frontier settlement could change everything we think we know. Throughout history, discoveries once believed impossible have emerged when least expected. Entire cities thought to exist only in legend have been uncovered beneath deserts, forests, and modern streets. The next great discovery may already be waiting beneath our feet.
Perhaps the greatest legacy of the missing legion is not the mystery itself, but the reminder that even the most powerful civilizations leave behind unfinished stories. Rome conquered kingdoms, built roads across continents, and commanded armies that seemed unstoppable. Yet despite all its strength, it could not preserve every chapter of its own history. Time erased names, scattered records, and buried evidence beneath countless generations, leaving only fragments for the future to rediscover. As we close this journey, one question remains exactly where it has stood for more than 2,000 years. Did those Roman soldiers perish beneath an unfamiliar sky? Did they spend the rest of their lives serving a distant empire? Or did they quietly disappear into history, their descendants never realizing that their ancestors once marched beneath the eagle standards of Rome? Until new evidence finally emerges, the silence surrounding the lost legion will remain one of history's greatest and most enduring mysteries.
Perhaps one day, an explorer will uncover a forgotten military outpost deep within an isolated valley. Perhaps an ancient scroll, preserved inside a sealed tomb or abandoned temple, will describe the final march of those missing soldiers in extraordinary detail. Or perhaps the evidence has already been discovered, resting unnoticed inside a museum collection, waiting for someone to recognize its true significance. History has surprised us before, and it will almost certainly surprise us again. The story of Rome's vanished legion has inspired books, documentaries, academic debates, and countless expeditions, not because historians enjoy unanswered questions, but because mysteries like this remind us how much of the ancient world has been lost forever. Every generation believes it stands a little closer to the truth than the one before. New technologies reveal hidden landscapes, forgotten settlements, and buried structures that previous archaeologists could never have imagined. Yet the final answer remains just beyond our reach, hidden somewhere within the enormous silence left behind by history itself. Until that day arrives, the missing legion continues to occupy a unique place in the story of Rome. It reminds us that even the greatest empire of the ancient world could not control every frontier, preserve every document, or protect every soldier from disappearing into the unknown. Empires may shape history, but time reshapes empires, leaving behind mysteries that no army, no emperor, and no historian can completely erase. And somewhere beyond the deserts, beyond the mountains, and beyond the final pages of the surviving Roman records, the footsteps of those forgotten legionaries still echo through history. Whether they ended in battle, captivity, or an entirely new beginning, their journey continues to challenge everything we think we know about the ancient world. Sometimes the greatest discovery is not finding every answer, but realizing how many extraordinary questions still remain unanswered. Perhaps that is why stories like this never truly grow old. They remind us that history is not a collection of perfect answers carved into stone, but a living puzzle assembled from broken fragments, forgotten voices, and discoveries still waiting beneath the earth. Every generation inherits these mysteries, adding new evidence, questioning old assumptions, and searching for connections that previous historians could not see. The search itself becomes part of the story,
proving that the past is never as silent as it first appears. Across the ancient world, thousands of Roman forts, roads, and settlements have already been uncovered by archaeologists, yet countless more remain hidden beneath forests, deserts, and modern cities. Every excavation begins with uncertainty. Most reveal ordinary objects, pottery, coins, weapons, or tools, but occasionally they uncover something extraordinary that changes our understanding of history forever. The mystery of the Lost Legion reminds us that the next extraordinary discovery may still be waiting beneath untouched ground. If one day undeniable evidence finally appears, it will not simply solve the disappearance of a Roman legion. It will reshape our understanding of how far Roman influence may have reached, how prisoners survived beyond imperial borders, and how civilizations separated by thousands of miles may have encountered one another in ways historians never imagined. A single inscription, a forgotten military record, or a carefully preserved burial could answer questions that have survived for more than 20 centuries. Until that moment arrives, the vanished legion will remain exactly where history left it, standing at the edge of certainty, somewhere between documented fact and enduring mystery. Their final march has never truly ended. It continues every time a historian opens an ancient manuscript, every time an archaeologist brushes away centuries of dust, and every time someone asks the same question that has echoed through history for 2,000 years. Where did Rome's lost legion really go? History has a remarkable way of preserving questions long after it loses the answers. The Roman Empire recorded triumphs, celebrated victories, and carved the names of its greatest leaders into stone. Yet the fate of thousands of disciplined soldiers slowly disappeared into silence. Their story reminds us that history is not only shaped by what survives, but also by what is missing. Sometimes the greatest mystery is created not by what ancient writers chose to record, but by what they could no longer explain. When we imagine the final days of those legionaries, it is impossible not to wonder what they themselves believed. Did they still hope to return to Rome? Did they look toward the western horizon each evening, remembering families they would never see again? Or did time slowly transform strangers into neighbors, replacing memories of the empire with entirely new lives in distant lands? These are questions no surviving document can answer, yet they remain deeply human questions that continue to connect us with people who lived more than 2,000 years ago. Perhaps somewhere, an unnamed Roman veteran spent his final years telling children's stories about marble temples, disciplined armies, and a city they would never see. Perhaps those stories slowly became legends, changing with every generation until Rome itself sounded more like a distant myth than a real place. History is filled with moments where memory survives long after written records disappear, carried not by stone monuments, but by ordinary people determined to remember where they came from. And that may be the most powerful lesson hidden within this extraordinary mystery. Empires rise, armies march, civilizations reshape the world. Yet in the end, history is remembered through individual lives, through hopes, fears, sacrifices, and stories passed from one generation to the next. The Roman legion may have vanished from official records, but their unanswered journey continues to remind us that even after 2,000 years, the past still holds secrets capable of inspiring wonder, curiosity, and the endless search for truth. Even today, historians continue to debate the disappearance of Rome's lost legion with the same fascination that has endured for generations. University classrooms, archaeological conferences, and historical journals still revisit the evidence, not because the mystery refuses to be solved, but because every new discovery has the potential to change everything. History has repeatedly shown that a single overlooked inscription or forgotten manuscript can rewrite entire chapters of the ancient world. Until every possibility has been explored, the search cannot truly end.
There is something deeply human about searching for people who vanished so long ago. These were not legendary heroes with supernatural powers. They were ordinary soldiers who laughed with friends, worried about tomorrow, dreamed of returning home, and believed they would survive another campaign. Somewhere beyond the frontier, those ordinary lives were swallowed by extraordinary circumstances, leaving behind a silence that has echoed across more than 20 centuries.
Perhaps the greatest tragedy is not that they disappeared, but that history remembers them only as a mystery. Thousands of individual names, families, ambitions, and memories have been reduced to a single unanswered question. Somewhere among those forgotten faces may have been fathers, brothers, craftsmen, poets, or farmers who never intended to become part of one of history's greatest enigmas. Yet time transformed them into exactly that, a legend born from uncertainty.
And so, as our journey through this remarkable mystery draws closer to its end, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The Roman legion may have vanished beyond the edge of the known world, but its story never truly disappeared. It survives in ancient texts, buried ruins, and the endless curiosity of those who refuse to let history's unanswered questions fade into silence. As long as people continue searching for the truth, the lost legion will never be completely forgotten.
As historians often remind us, the greatest mysteries are not always hidden behind myths or legends. Sometimes they are found within real events, recorded by real people, where one crucial piece is simply missing. The disappearance of Rome's lost legion is one such mystery. We know they marched, we know they fought, we know many were captured. Beyond that, certainty slowly gives way to possibility, and possibility becomes the space where history and imagination carefully meet.
Throughout the centuries, countless expeditions have searched for traces of these forgotten soldiers. Archaeologists have examined remote frontier settlements. Historians have compared Roman, Parthian, and Chinese records line by line. Linguists have studied ancient names and inscriptions. Geneticists have explored family histories stretching back thousands of years. Every discipline has contributed another fragment, yet the complete picture remains just beyond reach, reminding us how difficult it is to reconstruct lives separated from us by more than 20 centuries.
Perhaps the true value of this mystery lies not in discovering a dramatic ending, but in understanding the world these soldiers inhabited. Their story reveals the enormous distances of the ancient world, the fragile nature of historical records, and the countless human lives that disappeared without leaving complete accounts behind. It reminds us that history is not only written by emperors and generals, but also by ordinary people, whose stories survive only through scattered traces waiting to be rediscovered. And maybe, somewhere beneath an untouched layer of earth, or inside a forgotten archive resting quietly on an ancient shelf, the final chapter still exists. Until that chapter is found, the Roman legion that vanished beyond the frontier will continue to stand as one of history's most compelling reminders that even the greatest empire on earth could not preserve every story. Some journeys simply disappear into silence, leaving future generations to continue the search. If the mystery of the vanished legion teaches us anything, it is that history is rarely as simple as it first appears. Every answer uncovers another question, and every discovery reminds us how much has already been lost. Ancient empires left behind magnificent monuments, carefully carved inscriptions, and detailed chronicles, yet even they could not preserve every chapter of their own story. Somewhere beyond the reach of Rome's surviving records, the final footsteps of those forgotten soldiers faded into silence, leaving behind a mystery that continues to inspire historians across the world. Imagine, for a moment, the last evening those legionaries spent together beneath unfamiliar stars. Campfires flickered against the darkness. Tired soldiers repaired worn sandals, sharpened swords, and spoke quietly about home. Some dreamed of returning to Rome with honor. Others thought about families waiting hundreds of miles away. None of them could have imagined that centuries later, their final journey would become one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in military history. Perhaps they never realized they had already crossed the invisible line between recorded history and forgotten history. One more march, one more sunrise, one more command echoed across the ranks. Then, the surviving records simply end. The silence that followed became louder than any battle ever described by Roman historians. It is this silence, more than anything else, that has kept generations of researchers searching for answers.
And so the mystery endures, not because history has failed us, but because it reminds us that the past is still incomplete. Somewhere beneath ancient ruins, inside forgotten archives, or hidden beneath landscapes that have remained untouched for centuries, another piece of this remarkable story may still survive. Until that day comes, the lost Roman legion will remain exactly where it has stood for more than 2,000 years, waiting patiently at the edge of history, where certainty ends and mystery begins.
Even after centuries of study, the story of Rome's lost legion remains one of the few mysteries where history refuses to deliver a final verdict. Some scholars believe the surviving prisoners disappeared into the vast eastern frontier, gradually becoming part of distant cultures. Others argue they never traveled so far at all, suggesting the legend simply grew larger with every generation. Between these competing theories lies a simple truth. Without decisive evidence, the mystery remains alive, inviting each generation to continue the search where the last one stopped.
History has often surprised those willing to keep looking. The ruins of Troy were once dismissed as fiction until archaeologists uncovered them beneath layers of earth. The Dead Sea Scrolls remained hidden for nearly 2,000 years before changing our understanding of the ancient world. Forgotten shipwrecks have emerged from the depths of the sea, carrying perfectly preserved artifacts that historians believed were lost forever. These discoveries remind us that time conceals many secrets, but it does not erase them completely. Somewhere, perhaps in an unexplored valley, beneath an abandoned fortress, or inside a forgotten archive untouched for centuries, another clue may still exist. It may be nothing more than a weathered inscription, a military roster, or a fragment of a letter written by someone who witnessed the final journey of those Roman soldiers. History has been transformed before by discoveries far smaller than this. Sometimes a single piece of evidence is enough to illuminate an entire forgotten chapter of the past. Until that moment arrives, the vanished legion will continue to stand as a symbol of everything we have yet to discover. Their story reminds us that history is not a finished monument carved in stone, but an endless journey of curiosity, evidence, and exploration. As long as unanswered questions remain hidden beneath the dust of time, there will always be another expedition, another excavation, and another historian willing to follow the trail into the unknown. Beyond the mystery itself lies another fascinating question that historians often ask. If thousands of Roman prisoners truly survived, how long could they have preserved their identity? Language changes, traditions evolve, children grow up surrounded by new customs rather than old ones. Within only a few generations, even the strongest memories of Rome could have faded into stories repeated around evening fires, slowly transforming from personal memories into family legends whose origins were no longer fully understood.
This gradual transformation has happened many times throughout history. Communities separated from their homeland often adapt to survive. They adopt new languages, new clothing, new traditions, and new beliefs while quietly preserving fragments of their past. A family name changes, a military tradition survives, an unfamiliar ritual continues for centuries without anyone remembering exactly where it began. If the Lost Legion truly settled far beyond Rome's frontier, traces of their identity may have survived in ways far subtler than armor, weapons, or written records.
The Silk Road made such cultural exchanges far more possible than many people realize today. Merchants traveled thousands of miles carrying silk, spices, precious metals, glassware, and ideas between East and West. Along these routes moved not only goods, but also languages, religions, technologies, and people. Prisoners, mercenaries, traders, and diplomats all crossed landscapes that connected civilizations once believed to be completely isolated from one another. Seen from this perspective, the mystery becomes even more extraordinary. It is no longer simply the story of soldiers who disappeared. It becomes the story of how human lives could quietly bridge distant civilizations without ever appearing in the grand histories written by emperors. And perhaps, somewhere along those ancient trade routes, the forgotten footsteps of Rome's lost legion continued long after the empire itself believed they had vanished forever. As the centuries passed, the Roman Empire slowly transformed into memory. But the lands beyond its eastern frontier continued to evolve. New kingdoms emerged, old empires disappeared, trade routes shifted with every generation. If the missing legion had truly survived somewhere in the east, they would have witnessed a world changing around them, while the homeland they once served gradually faded into history. Their descendants may have grown up knowing nothing of the Senate, the Colosseum, or the mighty city that had once ruled nearly half the known world. Some historians believe the greatest obstacle in solving this mystery is our modern expectation that every important event must leave clear evidence behind. The ancient world worked very differently. Countless villages disappeared without records. Entire armies were lost in deserts, forests, and mountains where no historian was present to witness their final moments. Many official archives were destroyed by wars, fires, earthquakes, and the simple passage of time. Silence, therefore, is not unusual in ancient history. What makes this case extraordinary is the scale of that silence. Imagine discovering a single Roman helmet buried beside an ancient Chinese fortress, or uncovering an inscription written in Latin thousands of miles beyond Rome's known frontier. Such a discovery would instantly become one of the greatest archaeological finds of the century. Yet experienced archaeologists know that history rarely reveals its greatest secrets all at once. Instead, the truth often emerges through dozens of small discoveries made across many decades, each one adding another fragment to an enormous puzzle. For now, those fragments remain scattered across continents. Some rest inside museum collections, others remain buried beneath forgotten landscapes that have not yet been excavated. And perhaps the most important clue has not even been recognized for what it truly is. Until that missing piece is finally found,
the vanished Roman legion will continue to stand as one of history's greatest reminders that the past still holds secrets capable of surprising even the most experienced historians.
There is another reason why this mystery continues to fascinate historians. It challenges one of our deepest assumptions about the Roman Empire, that its reach, its records, and its military organization were nearly perfect. Rome built roads that crossed continents, established forts along distant frontiers, and maintained one of the most disciplined armies in history. Yet despite all of that organization, thousands of soldiers disappeared into a chapter of history that remains unfinished. The Lost Legion reminds us that even the greatest empires could not control every corner of the world they sought to conquer.
Modern archaeology has repeatedly demonstrated that patience often succeeds where certainty fails. Entire Roman forts have been uncovered beneath farmland that had been cultivated for centuries. Ancient battlefields have been identified only after advanced aerial surveys revealed patterns invisible from the ground. Coins buried by frightened soldiers, fragments of broken armor, and forgotten camps have all emerged from beneath layers of earth, each discovery adding another sentence to stories historians believed had already ended.
This is why researchers remain hopeful. They understand that history is not discovered in a single dramatic moment. It is reconstructed piece by piece. One inscription confirms a location, another identifies a commander. A buried road explains the route of an army. Slowly, separate discoveries begin connecting with one another until a forgotten chapter suddenly becomes clear. What once seemed impossible gradually transforms into accepted history through careful evidence rather than speculation.
Until such evidence appears, the fate of Rome's missing legion remains suspended between possibility and proof. It is a mystery that invites caution as much as imagination, encouraging historians to balance curiosity with discipline. Perhaps somewhere beyond the known frontier, the final answer has waited in silence for more than 2,000 years, untouched by time, patiently waiting for the moment when history is finally ready to find it.
Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this mystery is that it forces us to reconsider the ancient world itself. We often imagine Rome, Parthia, and Han China as distant civilizations existing in separate corners of history, barely aware of one another. Yet long before modern maps connected continents, merchants, diplomats, prisoners, and explorers were already traveling extraordinary distances. Ideas moved with them, technologies moved with them, and sometimes people vanished into those vast networks, leaving behind stories that crossed cultures without leaving complete written records. The Silk Road was never a single road, but a vast web of routes stretching across deserts, mountains, and fertile valleys. Along these paths traveled silk from China, glass from Rome, spices from India, precious metals from Central Asia, and countless travelers seeking opportunity or survival. It is entirely possible that somewhere along these routes, Roman prisoners encountered people whose languages, customs, and beliefs were unlike anything they had ever imagined. Whether they remained prisoners or eventually found freedom, their journey would have taken them farther from home than almost any Roman citizen could have dreamed possible. History repeatedly reminds us that human survival often depends upon adaptation. Soldiers captured in distant lands rarely remained exactly as they had once been. They learned new languages, adopted unfamiliar traditions, and found ways to build lives in places they never intended to see. If even a handful of Roman legionaries survived beyond Carrhae, they would almost certainly have changed with every passing year, becoming part of the cultures around them, while quietly carrying memories of an empire that grew farther away with every sunrise. That possibility transforms this mystery from a simple military question into something much larger. It becomes a story about resilience, identity, and the remarkable ability of human beings to survive even after history itself believes they have disappeared. And perhaps that is why the search continues, not only to discover where the Legion went, but to understand what became of the people who marched beneath Rome's banners and quietly vanished beyond the edge of the known world. In the end, the greatest obstacle facing historians may not be the absence of evidence, but the passage of time itself. More than 20 centuries have slipped by since those Roman soldiers disappeared beyond the empire's frontier. Rivers have changed their course. Deserts have buried ancient roads beneath endless layers of sand. And entire cities have risen over places where forgotten camps may once have stood. Every passing century has carried the truth a little farther from those determined to find it, making each new discovery more precious than the last.
Yet history has never surrendered its secrets easily. The ruins of Pompeii slept beneath volcanic ash for nearly 1,700 years before returning to the light. The terracotta army remained hidden beneath Chinese farmland until a farmer accidentally uncovered one of archaeology's greatest discoveries. Across the world, remarkable pieces of the past continue to emerge from places no one expected. These discoveries remind historians that patience is often the greatest tool of all, because history reveals its answers only when the time is right.
Perhaps somewhere beneath an untouched layer of earth lies a forgotten Roman camp whose foundations have never been disturbed. Perhaps a weathered inscription waits inside an abandoned fortress, its faded Latin letters still preserving the names of soldiers believed to have vanished forever. Or perhaps the final clue rests quietly inside an overlooked manuscript stored on a forgotten library shelf, waiting for someone to notice a single sentence that changes everything historians thought they knew. Until such a discovery is made, the fate of Rome's missing legion will remain suspended between fact and possibility. It is a mystery that reminds us how little separates certainty from silence, and how easily even the greatest achievements of mankind can disappear beneath the weight of time. As long as unanswered questions remain hidden beneath the ancient world, the search for Rome's lost legion will continue, inspiring every new generation to look beyond what history remembers and toward everything it has yet to reveal.
Not every historian agrees that the mystery can ever be solved, and that disagreement is one of the reasons it continues to attract so much attention. Some scholars argue that the evidence connecting the missing legion to distant eastern settlements is simply too weak. They point out that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and so far, no Roman military records, archaeological discoveries, or contemporary documents have provided a direct connection between the prisoners captured after Carrhae and the villages later associated with the legend. In their view, the simplest explanation remains the most likely. The prisoners disappeared into the vast Parthian Empire, where time gradually erased every trace of their existence.
Other researchers, however, believe history is rarely that simple. They remind us that the ancient world was far more interconnected than many people imagine today. Trade caravans crossed continents, diplomats traveled enormous distances, and prisoners were frequently relocated to strengthen distant frontiers. While the surviving evidence cannot confirm the theory beyond doubt, neither does it completely eliminate the possibility. Between certainty and speculation lies a narrow space where historians continue searching, hoping that one overlooked discovery may finally shift the balance.
This debate reflects something much larger than the fate of a single Roman legion. It reveals how historians work whenever evidence is incomplete. Every inscription must be examined carefully. Every translation must be questioned. Every archaeological discovery must be placed within its proper historical context. Unlike myths, history cannot rely upon imagination alone. Every conclusion must be built slowly, supported by evidence that can withstand careful scrutiny from scholars around the world. And perhaps that careful search is what makes this mystery so enduring. It reminds us that history is not a collection of fixed answers, but an ongoing investigation. Every new generation inherits the same unanswered questions, equipped with better technology, fresh perspectives, and renewed determination. Somewhere, hidden beyond the surviving records, the final piece of this extraordinary puzzle may still exist, waiting quietly for the moment when history is finally able to reveal what truly became of Rome's vanished legion.
Even among those who reject the more dramatic theories, there is broad agreement on one important fact. The Battle of Carrhae was one of the greatest military catastrophes in Roman history. Thousands of experienced soldiers were killed, thousands more were captured, and Rome suffered a humiliation that echoed throughout the ancient world. For decades afterward, Roman leaders sought not only revenge, but also redemption, hoping to restore the honor that had been lost beneath the burning skies of Mesopotamia.
The defeat left deep scars upon the Roman imagination. Future generals studied the mistakes made at Carrhae with extraordinary care. They learned never to underestimate unfamiliar terrain, never to rely upon confidence alone, and never to pursue an enemy without understanding the battlefield ahead. Military reforms gradually reflected these painful lessons, proving that even devastating defeats could shape the future of one of history's greatest empires. In this way, the vanished legion continued influencing Roman strategy long after the soldiers themselves had disappeared from the historical record. Perhaps that human tragedy explains why the mystery has survived for more than 2,000 years. It is not simply the story of an army lost to history. It is the story of thousands of individual lives interrupted without conclusion. Until new evidence finally emerges, their final journey remains unfinished, inviting every generation to continue searching for answers hidden somewhere beyond the edge of Rome's last known horizon. Yet for the families left behind, strategy meant very little. Somewhere in Rome, mothers waited for sons who would never return. Wives held on to fading hope that a messenger might still arrive carrying news from the eastern frontier. Children grew into adulthood knowing only that their fathers had marched away beneath the eagle standards of Rome and vanished into lands so distant that even the empire could no longer follow them. Behind every historical mystery are ordinary lives forever changed by extraordinary events. For modern historians, the mystery of Rome's vanished legion represents something far greater than a missing army. It has become a case study in how history is reconstructed when certainty no longer exists. Every surviving document must be questioned. Every archaeological discovery must be compared with dozens of others. Every theory must survive careful examination before it can be accepted. Unlike legends, history cannot rely upon what sounds convincing. It must rely upon what the evidence can honestly support, even when the final answer remains frustratingly incomplete. This careful approach has changed many historical mysteries before. Civilizations once believed to be mythical were eventually proven real through archaeology. Ancient battles known only from scattered texts were later confirmed by buried weapons, fortifications, and human remains. Again and again, the past has reminded historians that patience often succeeds where assumptions fail. Because of this, few serious researchers are willing to declare the mystery permanently unsolvable. Instead, they continue collecting evidence, believing that the next discovery may come from the most unexpected place. Imagine an archaeologist brushing away centuries of dust from a weathered stone. At first, it appears ordinary, Then faint Latin letters slowly emerge beneath the sunlight. A forgotten name, a military rank, a date that matches the years following Carrhae. Discoveries like this have transformed history before, and they may do so again. Sometimes an object no larger than a human hand becomes the missing piece capable of connecting centuries of unanswered questions. Until that moment arrives, the vanished legion remains suspended between history and mystery. It reminds us that the ancient world was far more connected, far more unpredictable, and far more complex than we often imagine. Somewhere beyond Rome's final frontier, beneath forgotten landscapes untouched for generations, the last chapter of these soldiers' remarkable journey may still exist, waiting silently for the day when history is finally able to tell their story in full.
As our journey through this mystery begins to draw toward its conclusion, one remarkable truth becomes impossible to ignore. The Roman Empire has been gone for more than 1,500 years. Its emperors, its armies, and even many of its greatest cities have become part of the distant past. Yet the unanswered fate of a single legion continues to capture more attention than countless victories whose outcomes are known in perfect detail. Perhaps this is because certainty eventually becomes history, while mystery continues to inspire imagination, investigation, and discovery. The soldiers who marched beyond Rome's eastern frontier never expected to become legends. They believed they were following orders, serving their empire, and completing another military campaign. They could not have imagined that centuries later, historians would still search for their final destination. Archaeologists would still examine distant landscapes for traces of their journey, and people across the world would still wonder what truly became of them after the surviving records fell silent. History often remembers great conquerors, famous emperors, and decisive battles, but it is equally shaped by ordinary individuals whose names have been forgotten. The missing legion reminds us that behind every military campaign stood thousands of human lives filled with hopes, fears, friendships, and dreams of returning home. Long after official records disappeared, those lives remained real. Their families mourned them. Their comrades remembered them. And somewhere, perhaps far beyond Rome, their descendants may have carried fragments of those memories into an entirely different world. Whether the final answer is ever discovered or not, the mystery has already achieved something extraordinary. It has united historians, archaeologists, linguists, and researchers from many different countries in a shared search for the truth. Few stories possess the power to connect so many generations through a single unanswered question. And perhaps that is why Rome's vanished legion continues marching through history, not across ancient battlefields, but through the curiosity of every person determined to uncover what time has tried so hard to conceal. In the end, perhaps the greatest mystery is not where the legion disappeared, but why its story continues to resonate after more than 2,000 years. Across every generation, people have looked toward the unknown with the same mixture of curiosity and wonder. We search because we believe every mystery has an answer. Yet history reminds us that some answers remain hidden, waiting patiently beneath centuries of dust until the right discovery finally brings them back. Even today, the search continues. Archaeologists continue excavating forgotten settlements. Historians continue translating damaged manuscripts written in fading ink. Scientists continue applying new technology to evidence discovered decades earlier. Every generation brings fresh questions, better tools, and renewed determination. The truth may still be hidden, but history has repeatedly shown that the impossible often becomes possible through patience, persistence,
and careful investigation.
Perhaps one day, somewhere beneath an untouched layer of earth or inside a forgotten archive sealed for centuries, a single discovery will finally reveal the fate of Rome's vanished legion. Until that day arrives, the mystery will remain exactly where it has always been, standing at the boundary between history and legend, reminding us that the ancient world still holds secrets capable of changing everything we think we know. And as long as those secrets remain hidden, the Lost Legion will continue its endless march through the imagination of every generation that dares to ask, what really happened?
Somewhere beyond the last Roman outpost, beyond the deserts crossed by ancient caravans, and beyond the mountains that separated great civilizations, thousands of soldiers took their final recorded steps. They carried the discipline of Rome, the hopes of their families, and the confidence of an empire that believed itself unstoppable. None of them realized that history would remember not their victories, but their disappearance. Their silence became louder than any triumph recorded by Roman historians. History has never been defined only by the stories we can fully explain. In many ways, it is the unanswered questions that continue to shape our understanding of the past. Every generation inherits mysteries left behind by those who came before, and each generation brings new methods, new discoveries, and new perspectives. The story of Rome's vanished legion is one of those rare mysteries that refuses to disappear, not because historians have failed, but because history itself has chosen to keep one final chapter hidden beyond our reach. If those soldiers truly disappeared into distant lands, then somewhere they laughed, worked, struggled, grew older, and eventually passed away beneath skies far removed from the city they once called home. Their children may never have spoken Latin. Their grandchildren may never have heard the names of Caesar or Crassus. Over time, Rome itself may have become nothing more than a fading memory, carried within stories that slowly blended into local traditions until their true origin was forgotten forever.
There is something profoundly moving about that possibility. We often imagine history ending with great battles or dramatic victories, yet most human lives continue quietly after the final page of official records has been written. The Lost Legion reminds us that countless ordinary stories exist beyond what ancient historians chose to record. Those silent lives, hidden beneath centuries of forgotten history, are just as important as the famous names carved into monuments and preserved inside museums. Perhaps that is why this mystery has survived for more than 20 centuries. It is not only a question about missing soldiers. It is a reminder that history is ultimately the story of people who hoped, feared, loved, suffered, and dreamed of returning home. Whether the final evidence is ever discovered or not, the vanished legion has already secured its place among history's greatest mysteries, inspiring every new generation to continue searching for the truth hidden somewhere beyond the horizon of the ancient world. As the centuries continue to pass, the silence surrounding Rome's lost legion grows no smaller. Instead, it becomes more meaningful. Every unanswered question reminds us that history is not a perfect record preserved for future generations. It is a fragile collection of surviving voices, damaged manuscripts, forgotten ruins, and remarkable discoveries that somehow escaped destruction. Between those surviving fragments lies an enormous silence, and it is within that silence that the greatest mysteries of the ancient world continue to live. The Roman soldiers who marched east could never have imagined that their final campaign would outlast the empire itself. They believed they were serving the most powerful civilization on earth. Rome's banners stretched across continents. Its roads connected distant provinces. Its armies seemed unstoppable. Yet even an empire of such extraordinary strength
could not protect every story from being swallowed by time. The disappearance of a single legion reminds us that history can lose even its most...
Today, researchers continue their search with tools the ancient world could never have imagined. Satellites examine landscapes hidden beneath desert sands. Ground-penetrating radar reveals forgotten structures buried beneath centuries of soil. Artificial intelligence helps compare damaged manuscripts scattered across libraries around the world. Every technological advance brings fresh hope that somewhere among countless forgotten clues, the final answer may still survive. The search has changed, but the question remains exactly the same. And perhaps that question will continue long after we are gone. Future archaeologists may uncover evidence that transforms everything historians believe today. Or perhaps the mystery will remain forever unsolved, reminding every generation that the past still holds secrets beyond our reach. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. The Roman legion that vanished beyond the eastern frontier has earned a place among history's greatest mysteries, not because we know its ending, but because after more than 2,000 years, the search for that ending has never truly stopped. Maybe the final answer is not waiting inside a famous museum or beneath the ruins of a great city. Perhaps it rests in a place no archaeologist has ever searched, hidden beneath an isolated valley where no modern road has ever reached. History has often revealed its greatest discoveries in the most unexpected places. A farmer digging a well uncovered the terracotta army. Shepherds searching for lost animals discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls. Ordinary moments have repeatedly uncovered extraordinary chapters of the past, reminding us that history still sleeps beneath the surface of the world around us. If one day the mystery of Rome's vanished legion is finally solved, it will not simply answer a single historical question. It will reshape our understanding of the connections between ancient civilizations, revealing how far Roman influence may have extended and how the lives of ordinary soldiers became intertwined with cultures thousands of miles beyond the empire's frontier. Such a discovery would remind us that history is not divided into isolated civilizations, but woven together through countless journeys, encounters, and forgotten human stories. Until that remarkable day arrives, historians will continue comparing ancient texts, archaeologists will continue excavating forgotten landscapes, and researchers will continue testing every new theory against the evidence. This patient search is what defines historical scholarship. The goal is not to prove the most exciting theory, but to uncover the truth, wherever that truth may ultimately lead. Sometimes the greatest achievement is not finding immediate answers, but refusing to stop asking important questions. And perhaps that is the true legacy of Rome's lost legion. More than 2,000 years after their final recorded march, they continue inspiring curiosity across the world. Their story reminds us that history is never truly complete. Somewhere beyond every accepted conclusion lies another unanswered question, another forgotten clue, and another opportunity to discover that the past is far richer, far stranger, and far more mysterious than we ever imagined. As we reach the final chapter of this remarkable journey, one thought becomes impossible to ignore. The Roman Empire believed it could measure the world, map every frontier, and conquer every enemy. Yet beyond the limits of its greatest achievements, there remained places it did not fully understand and stories it could not preserve. The vanished legion stands as a quiet reminder that no empire, regardless of its strength, can ever record every human life or explain every mystery left behind by time. History often gives us the names of emperors, the dates of battles, and the rise and fall of civilizations.
But sometimes it leaves behind only silence. It is within that silence that imagination begins, not to replace evidence, but to inspire the search for it. Every broken inscription, every forgotten ruin, and every weathered manuscript carries the possibility that another missing piece of this extraordinary puzzle may still survive. Until every possibility has been explored, the story remains unfinished.
Perhaps, somewhere beyond the deserts of Central Asia, beneath the foundations of an ancient settlement untouched for centuries, rests the final evidence that historians have searched for since the first chronicles were written. Or perhaps the truth disappeared forever with the last soldier who remembered the roads leading back to Rome. Both possibilities are equally humbling, reminding us that history is not only the story of what humanity remembers, but also of everything it has quietly forgotten.
So the next time you look at an ancient map or read the name of the Roman Empire, remember that somewhere beyond its final frontier marched thousands of men whose fate remains unknown. Whether they perished beneath unfamiliar skies, built new lives in distant lands, or became part of another civilization entirely, their journey continues to echo across the centuries. And until history finally reveals its last hidden chapter, the lost Roman legion will remain one of the ancient world's greatest unsolved mysteries, inviting every generation to continue the search where the last one left off.
The ancient world was vast beyond imagination. Between Rome and the distant kingdoms of the East stretched thousands of miles of deserts, mountains, rivers, and endless plains where entire armies could disappear without leaving a trace. To us, these distances can be crossed in hours aboard modern aircraft. To a Roman soldier, they represented a journey into lands that seemed almost beyond the limits of the world itself. Somewhere along those immense frontiers, the final chapter of their story was written, even if history never preserved the words.
After every document has been examined, every battlefield surveyed, and every theory carefully debated, one undeniable truth remains. We may never know the complete fate of Rome's vanished legion. Yet perhaps that uncertainty is exactly what has preserved their story for more than 2,000 years. History often remembers its greatest victories with certainty, but it remembers its greatest mysteries with endless curiosity. The silence left behind by these forgotten soldiers has become more powerful than countless battles whose outcomes are known in perfect detail. Perhaps one day, another remarkable discovery will emerge from beneath forgotten ruins, changing everything historians believe today. It may be a weathered military standard buried beneath ancient soil, a forgotten Roman inscription carved into distant stone, or a long-lost manuscript quietly waiting inside an overlooked archive. Until that moment arrives, every theory remains incomplete, every conclusion remains provisional, and every unanswered question continues to inspire another generation of researchers to continue the search. And maybe that is the greatest gift this mystery has left behind. It reminds us that history is not finished. Beneath every ancient landscape, inside every forgotten ruin, and beyond every accepted explanation, there may still be another story waiting to be uncovered. The Roman legion may have vanished from the records of an empire, but it never disappeared from human curiosity. As long as people continue searching for the truth, their final march will never truly come to an end. Imagine the moment if that final clue were found. A small fragment of weathered stone emerges from the earth. An archaeologist gently brushes away centuries of dust, revealing faint Latin letters still visible after 2 millennia. Perhaps it records the name of a forgotten centurion. Perhaps it marks the construction of a Roman outpost far beyond any location historians believed possible. Or perhaps it simply confirms that a group of exhausted soldiers reached a destination no surviving Roman writer ever knew existed. In that single moment, centuries of speculation could become documented history.
For every mystery history has solved, there are countless others that continue to wait in silence. Somewhere beneath forgotten deserts, abandoned fortresses, or untouched valleys, the evidence we seek may still exist exactly where it was left more than 2,000 years ago. Wind has buried it. Time has concealed it. Entire civilizations have risen and fallen above it. Yet history has shown again and again that the past has an extraordinary way of revealing itself when we least expect it. Every remarkable archaeological discovery begins the same way, with a single clue that someone almost overlooked. Until then, the Lost Legion remains suspended between evidence and imagination, occupying a place unlike any other mystery of the ancient world. It reminds us that even the greatest empire could lose track of its own people, and that the passage of time is capable of erasing almost everything except humanity's desire to understand what came before. The unanswered fate of these soldiers has become a symbol of every forgotten journey, every missing chapter, and every voice that history was unable to preserve.
Perhaps the greatest mystery was never where they disappeared. Perhaps the greatest mystery is how their silent journey continues to inspire millions of people more than 2,000 years later. Long after Rome itself crumbled into ruins, the footsteps of those vanished legionaries still echo through history, inviting each new generation to follow the trail just a little farther, always believing that somewhere beyond the next horizon, the truth is still waiting.
And perhaps that is where every great historical mystery ultimately leads us, not to certainty, but to humility. The ancient world was far larger, far more connected, and far more unpredictable than we often imagine. Every generation uncovers another forgotten city, another buried fortress, another lost manuscript that forces historians to rethink what they once believed to be true. The story of Rome's vanished legion stands among those enduring mysteries, reminding us that even after 2,000 years, the past is still capable of surprising us. When those legionaries marched beyond Rome's eastern frontier, they believed they were serving the greatest empire on earth. Their shields reflected the morning sun. Their standards carried the proud eagle of Rome. Their commanders believed every step had been carefully planned. Yet history has a way of humbling even the mightiest civilizations. Somewhere beyond the final pages of the surviving records, those soldiers disappeared into a silence that no emperor, no historian, and no conqueror has ever been able to fully explain.
Perhaps the truth is waiting beneath a forgotten ruin. Perhaps it rests inside a damaged scroll that has not yet been translated. Or perhaps it vanished forever with the final survivor who remembered the streets of Rome, the voices of his family, and the oath he once swore beneath the banners of the Republic. Whatever the answer may be, it reminds us that history is not simply a record of victories and defeats. It is also a record of questions that remain unanswered, inviting every generation to continue searching where the last one left off.
As our journey comes to an end, one mystery remains exactly as it began. Somewhere beyond the edge of the known world, thousands of Roman soldiers marched into history and never returned. Whether they found death beneath an unfamiliar sky, built new lives in distant lands, or simply disappeared into the endless passage of time, their final story has never been fully told. And until the ancient world reveals one last forgotten secret, the lost legion of Rome will continue to march,
not across deserts or battlefields, but through the imagination of everyone who has ever wondered what truly happened beyond the Empire's final frontier. History rarely offers perfect endings. More often, it leaves us standing at the edge of an unanswered question, reminding us that the past is not a completed story, but an unfinished conversation between generations. The mystery of Rome's vanished legion has endured because it represents something larger than a missing army. It represents every forgotten journey, every voice lost to time, and every chapter that history was unable to preserve. Even after 2,000 years, those silent footsteps continue to echo across deserts, mountains, and ancient trade routes, inviting us to keep searching for the truth hidden beyond the horizon. Perhaps one day, centuries from now, another generation will uncover the evidence we could not find. A forgotten inscription may emerge from beneath the earth. A buried fortress may reveal the names of soldiers long believed lost. An overlooked manuscript may finally connect the scattered fragments that historians have struggled to assemble for generations. Until that remarkable day arrives, the fate of Rome's lost legion will remain one of history's greatest unanswered questions. A mystery that reminds us how much of the ancient world still waits patiently beneath the dust of time, ready to surprise those willing to keep looking. Thank you for joining this journey into one of history's most enduring mysteries. If this story sparked your curiosity, remember that countless other forgotten civilizations, vanished kingdoms, unexplained disappearances, and ancient secrets are still waiting to be explored. History is far stranger than fiction, and every unanswered question brings us one step closer to understanding the incredible world that existed long before our own. Until our next journey through the shadows of the past, sleep well, stay curious, and never stop wondering what history has yet to reveal.